Thank you, Bob. I want to welcome everyone to the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association meeting. My name is Richard Close. We have a number of things we're going to discuss, very interesting. First, we'd like to start off by asking Bob to give us any information that we need to know, that the public needs to know for the webinar.
Okay, thank you. Just so everyone knows, we encourage that you ask questions to Assessor Jeffrey Prang. Some of you sent them in ahead of time, but there is a Q&A box at the bottom. Please type your question in there and then hit the enter key. And Matt Epstein on our screen in the upper right, he handles questions. He will look at all the questions and we'll pick out the ones. We have quite a few already. We'll pick out those that we have time to ask. Any that we do not ask tonight, and even the ones we do ask, are all sent to the assessor's office so that they can respond to you on important questions. And that's good. You may see a raise hand button down at the bottom. Please don't push that. You can if you want, but nothing's going to happen. We don't use that. We ask you to type your questions in. We just don't answer raise hand requests and ask people to ask a question. We need to take a look at it first. And this is being recorded. The video will be available about 3 days after the meeting. And I think that's it, Richard.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. So I'd like to have the board of directors introduce themselves. First, we'll start off with Matt.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Matt Epstein, Vice President of Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. I'll be asking the questions tonight to the assessor. I'll give you the further instructions as far as if you do want to ask questions, you can go ahead and start to send them on the Q&A, but I'll give a little bit more details in a little bit.
Okay. Next is Jules, who's in charge of the restaurant of the month. We had a great dinner tonight, Jules. You did a great job as usual.
I hope you all enjoyed the dinner. Hi, I'm Jules Fear. I'm Vice President of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association and Honorary Mayor of Sherman Oaks.
Selected by the City Council, correct?
Correct, 8 years ago.
Okay. What is your term?
When I'm gone.
Oh, you don't say that. Okay, next up is Tom.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Tom Glick, board member.
Okay. Next is John Eisen. John is an attorney, and we've asked him to comment on an important case that was decided by the federal district court yesterday, 110 pages, and it has significant impact on Los Angeles. John, can you give us a brief summary?
Yes. Hi, I'm John Eisen. I'm going to briefly mention a case called LA Alliance for Human Rights versus the City of Los Angeles and the County of Los Angeles. This case involves the homelessness in Los Angeles. And yesterday, a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction against the City and County of Los Angeles. This is rare for a preliminary injunction to be issued. We are going to be sending out an email blast, which will contain the court orders and a copy as an attachment of the entire 110-page ruling. You should read it. You don't have to be an attorney to understand it. It's very informative and understandable. Your own mind when you read this. I just wanted to mention one item. Remember last month, our speaker was City Controller Ron Galprin. Well, the federal judge has ordered him to oversee the creation of a report on all land potentially available within each council district for housing and sheltering the homeless of each district. And then he said something that I think reflects all of our sentiments. Listen to this. The homeless have been left to no other place to turn to but our beaches, parks, libraries, and sidewalks. And it is pivotal that they no longer rely on spaces that enhance quality of life for all citizens. Thank you, Richard.
Next up is Maria, and thank you, John, very much for this summary. Maria?
Should I give my report, Richard, or do I just
Why
say
don't you wait to just,
So I-
and what do you do? And then we'll do the report in a little bit.
Okay. So I'm Maria Calvin, and I chair the legislative committee for Sherman Oaks Homeowners.
Okay. Then the next up is Nancy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Segoyan, board member and membership chair. Just to say a quick minute about how important it is to support your homeowners association. We're the only nonprofit member-supported community organization. We're dedicated to preserving and protecting the quality of life here in Sherman Oaks. If you're not a member, we urge you to join. It's a small investment in your community that yields big results. You can go to our website, which is SOHA914.com, and sign up right there via PayPal or credit card. Or if you have questions, you can email joinsoha@gmail.com, and that will come to me, and happy to answer any questions. But please join us. We need your support, and we do tremendous good work on your behalf advocating for Sherman Oaks. Thanks.
Thank you. Jay? Jay,
I'm Jay Weitzler. I am the secretary and on the board of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. I'm the liaison along with Jules to the Buckley School, and also the liaison with the Hillside Federation, which is a large group of 60 plus various homeowners associations around the city that deal with all the problems in the hillside and fire areas.
Thank you. Okay, that's the board. Next, I'd like to introduce City Council Deputy Alex Nassif, who is the person in charge of Sherman Oaks for our council member. Alex?
Yes, hi, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Nassif. I am the Sherman Oaks Field Manager for Councilmember Rahman's office. A few legislative updates. Last week, the Housing Committee considered a new ordinance protecting tenants against harassment, as well as a set of amendments our office proposed to ensure that the law reflects the many forms of harassment that we regularly hear from our tenants and our tenant groups. The ordinance was passed out of committee, and our amendments were referred to the city's attorney's office to incorporate their amendments into the draft. We look forward to when this ordinance comes before the council, and we will keep you all updated on that. The Emergency Renters Assistance Program is still accepting applications. Tenants and landlords can apply before April 30th. Landlords can apply on behalf of their tenants. Everyone can apply by going to the HCID website at hcidla.lacity.org. Households may receive up to 12 months towards back rent owed. So if you or anyone you know is behind on their rent, this is a really great program and opportunity for them to apply to. A few homelessness updates. We have a new LAHSA, that's the LA Homeless Services Authority outreach team, which our office is particularly dedicating to our Valley areas. I have been doing outreach myself with a Hope of the Valley volunteer and SONC outreach member, Kira Durbin. This consistent outreach is key to our office's goal of an encampment to home model for our unhoused constituents here in Sherman Oaks. This is also very closely related to the Alliance lawsuit. So thank you for bringing that up. Two crucial parts of that model are locating sites in Sherman Oaks where we can bring services and housing. Locations are really key to this model. And the second part, as I mentioned before, is the outreach, the consistent outreach that that our LASA teams are doing, but also our wonderful volunteers with certain nonprofits in the area. So if you would like to volunteer, please reach out to me and let me know. We have some events and projects coming up. I will be hosting Coffee with Your Field Manager once a month starting in May. So please stay tuned for this date, or feel free to send me an email. We are beginning a monthly food drive, hopefully to begin in May. So a monthly drive up food distribution at Milliken Middle School. If anyone would like to join our volunteer corps who will be giving out the food at Milliken Middle, please let me know. We're also planning a beautification planting day at Ernie's Walk and a comprehensive cleanup day, possibly partnering with the bid. I know, Jules, you have so wonderfully volunteered so many times. So I think this will be a great opportunity for us to get out there and partner. And I got my shot, so I'm excited to do that now. So for the cleanup day, we're thinking of possibly the bid, so Ventura Boulevard between Van Nuys and Cedros or Noble. But please feel free to send other locations in Sherman Oaks. I only have one set of eyes, so if there's other locations, Jules, I sent our clean team out there to Woodman. So if there's other locations,
Thank
please.
you.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, please continue to send those to me. And last but not least, keep filing those 311 requests and keeping those service request numbers so that when you reach out to me, I can use those to reference when I follow up with the various city departments. Thank you. Actually, I should give my email. Sorry, one second. So my email is Alexandria, ALEXANDRIA N as in Nancy, A, S as in Sam, E, F as in Frank, at lacity.org.
Wow, that's a long one.
I know, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your being here this evening, and look forward to seeing you every month because we need to know what's happening in Sherman Oaks. Next up, Andy Solomon, Deputy City Attorney.
Hi, everyone.
For Sherman Oaks and the Van Nuys Division, LAPD.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Solomon. I am, should I wait till I'm on the big, there we go. My name is Andy Solomon. I am your neighborhood prosecutor from the City Attorney's Office. I'm assigned to Sherman Oaks and the Van Nuys area. I work very closely with all the government agencies, community. I work closely with the senior lead officers who you know, Officer Jose Saldana, and right now you have a temporary senior lead officer. I think is Officer Magana is temporarily here. They're not here today. They do have a special assignment, but and I don't mean to steal your thunder, Richard. You may have had that up next, but
no, we were notified.
Okay, yes. So they work closely with me. We work on problems that are not regularly solved by typical prosecution or police enforcement or government run-of-the-mill types of things. So I'll make it quick. The best way to reach me, I have a shorter email than Alexandria. It's andy.solomon, SOLIMAN, @lacity.org. It should be like down here. It's whatever the spelling is down here. And that's the best way to reach me right now. I typically work, I run around town. That's usually my job. I'm always on my phone doing emails, especially now during COVID. We're trying to work remotely. So that is the best way to reach me. And if you have trouble, any of the board members here are very helpful with everyone in SOHA, and they can get you to me or to the right people.
Okay. Give us, if you would, an interesting project you're working on.
Yes, I have. Okay, so the interesting thing is I have two properties that were exactly the same problem that kind of overlapped, where I have some properties, and I know this is an issue for SOHA. You guys talk about land use and properties a lot, and you guys are very well versed in this, but I have a property and then a second one, the same thing, where a person purchased it but did not intend to live in it yet. They wanted to develop it into a multi-unit place. However, they just left it there for whatever reason. And as they left it there, well, homeless people came in and began squatting on the property, causing issues for the neighbors. This is a typical story. However, with both of these properties, one of them we successfully completed, the other one is currently in process. I did get in touch with the property owner, and we discussed how to kind of get things moving, get the ball rolling on demolition. Because if there's no structure and you intend to demolish it anyways and build something and the city has approved it, what are we waiting for? You're just housing people who are committing crimes next to neighbors who have families, and they don't need this trouble right now. So these are the kinds of issues we work with. We hear the story that they're squatters, we work with police, and then we discover, you know what, there's a different solution here, and maybe we can get the process going to get the demolition done. So that happened twice in the same month, where one was completed and another one popped up. I thought that was very interesting. It seems to be a pattern that I'm starting to see. So if you do see squatters in your neighborhood, in an abandoned area, if we can try to get, we've tried, sometimes it doesn't work, but if we can try to get the owner involved, then we can try to figure out a more long-term solution than the cat and mouse game that we see typically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Ryan Ahari.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. Good to see all of you again. My name is Ryan. I am the Sherman Oaks field representative for Assemblymember Adrin Nazarian's office. And I'm here today to give you all a report for what's going on in our office. So first, I want to say that our office recently did 2 events. We had our normal women's self-defense classes. We can't hold them in person still. So we went ahead and did some mental health workshops. We called them Self-Defense for the Soul. These happened on April 17th, 18th, and the 20th. And hopefully soon we will be able to do these physical self-defense classes in person again. We anticipate our office is reopening sometime in June or July, since we know that the state plans are reopening by June 15th if there are enough vaccines for those who want them. We also did some tenants workshops. So if SOHA or anyone on the board who's part of an organization would ever like to partner with our office on an event, we're always available. I'm always open to hearing any ideas in terms of ideas for the community for events. In terms of legislation, again, we are looking at a limited legislature in terms of the bills that members can introduce. So the members still ended up introducing 13 bills. In normal years, we would introduce 30 bills. I did want to highlight 2 of them. AB 773, this is the Slow Streets Act. For context, the Slow Streets was initiated by Governor Newsom. It was an executive order, and basically you can designate neighborhoods to block through traffic on their streets. That way people could use them for running, jogging, exercising, playing soccer, whatever it is. We want folks to be out of their homes during COVID. So this bill plans on institutionalizing that, making it permanent, so that beyond an executive order, it will exist as a program. So really excited to have this be one of the bills that we're pushing through. And another one, this is something that I came across personally as being a problem, AB 752. It basically is prescription cost at point of care. All of those times we've gone to a pharmacy, we've later found out how much prescriptions cost. And it's really frustrating because that takes a lot of time and resources on our end and the insurance's end to find out what the cheaper alternatives are. So at this bill, if it were to go through, it would inform patients of the cost of prescriptions and care at the moment that it's being prescribed. So that's again, AB 752. Bob, I do want to say thank you again, and Jeff, for giving Emma and I a really great presentation on Metro. If anyone ever wants to get in touch with any other, whether it be federal officials or city officials, please let us know. I think it's really important that we have all these communication lines open. So if anyone ever wants to get in touch, please let me know. With Caltrans requests, our office is continuously contacting Caltrans in terms of any requests the community puts in for debris, for leftover trash, graffiti, whatever it is. Please let me know. I can actually put them in for you. If you tell me where they are and send me some photos, I can put in a request and follow up with our Caltrans liaison to see what's going on. And finally, I wanted to mention our Armenian Scholarship Contest. We have an Armenian Genocide Scholarship Contest. The assembly member launches every year. Our deadline is now pushed to June 15th because of the incredible circumstances. High schoolers, 9th to 12th grade in California can participate in our essay contest or our virtual arts contest. Everything is mentioned on our website. If any of you know any high schoolers who want to apply, they can until June 15th. We're giving out awards between $500 and $1,000. So that's my report, and I'm available for any questions. And as always, I'll go ahead and leave my contact information in the chat so everyone can get in touch with me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, next is our speaker for this evening. When I was contacted by his office about speaking, I said to myself, the county assessor sounds awful boring. I don't think people are going to be that interested. And then I think it was Jackie started explaining to me what's happening with new laws and action that can be taken by the assessor's office to assist the public. And I got excited about having our speaker, Los Angeles County Assessor, Jeff Prang. Jeff?
Thank you, Richard. It's great to be here. This is the second time since I was first elected in 2014 to speak to the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, and I'm thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to visit with you this evening. I'm also glad to see that Jules Fear is here, the honorary mayor of Sherman Oaks. Jules, I seem to recall that all the heavy hitters in Los Angeles politics personally came to the city council meeting to celebrate your recognition as honorary mayor. It's very impressive. Sorry I wasn't there, but I'd like to add my voice to the chorus of praise and commending you for your leadership over the years. For those of you who don't know, I was actually a mayor myself. I served for 18 years on the city council in West Hollywood, including 4 terms as mayor. So today I'm going to provide some updates from my office with a sharp focus on Proposition 19. I am happy to take any questions either in the Q&A function or however the organization wants to handle those when we get to that point of the presentation. I always like to begin by telling anybody who I speak to what the assessor does. And Richard, thank you for acknowledging we're not that boring. Property tax administration is about as exciting as it can get. But I also like to importantly tell people what the assessor does not do. The one thing I do not do.
Okay, but wait a minute, actually.
I'm sorry.
I forgot 2 of our speakers. And once you finish, Jeff, everyone's going to disappear. So can you just wait a couple minutes and hold your thoughts? I apologize. Sure. With that, I want to introduce Maria Calban from our board. Maria, can you update us on Sacramento?
Oh, I'd be happy to update us on Sacramento. We have a huge fight on our hands because Sacramento is dead set against single-family neighborhoods and is trying to end our neighborhoods with massive amounts of legislation that benefit land speculators and developers over homeowners. We started a statewide coalition which has grown to a huge number of neighborhood groups throughout the state taking on this fight. But ultimately, it is all of us individually that also need to get involved, because the big problem in California is a lack of affordable housing, and Sacramento feels that adding more market rate housing everywhere will eventually lower the price of housing. And if any of you have checked out new housing in the area, none of it is affordable to most citizens. Affordable housing is in sizable numbers can only happen with the help of state and federal money. If we had those funds, we could easily find good places in our communities to build affordable housing that would not impact single-family neighborhoods. The communities that are part of our coalition, that are minority communities, communities of color, are most concerned about adding density to their neighborhoods because it will cause displacement for their residents. And we know that to be quite a fact. So next week, we're sending out a lot of email blasts asking all of you to help us in this fight. We are not trying to stop development, but these bills are ridiculous and they're going to end our single family neighborhoods. So that's my report, Richard.
Thank you. Bob Anderson, Metro.
Thanks, Richard.
Can't hear you, Bob.
Metro is building the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. And they're making a lot of decisions in the last couple of months. This is the project that's going to be rapid transit from the valley all the way down to the west side at Pico and Sepulveda. A lot of things have been happening and it's a bit confusing, but right now Metro has announced there are 5 different concepts that they are going to study for at least the next 2 years and maybe 3. And these are the concepts that we're going to end up with one of. And 4 of them are quite good. A couple of them are a monorail that runs along the 405. A couple of them are subways that are quite nice, go under Sepulveda Boulevard or they go under Van Nuys Boulevard. Fast, good projects, a little expensive. But one of them I'm going to talk about for a second is just totally unacceptable for Sherman Oaks. Basically, in simple words, we hate it. And we've coined a name for it. We call it the horrible halfway. It was proposed to Metro by Bechtel Consortia. And it's very simple. We call it a halfway because it's subway under the west side and it's subway under the mountain. But when it gets to Valley Vista Boulevard and Sepulveda, it comes out of the side of our hill with a 40-foot tunnel and tracks 30 feet in the air, roaring through our neighborhoods in each direction every 2.5 minutes. It will be ugly. It will make traffic worse. The noise will be horrendous for any around it. It's going to tear a lot of houses out. And if you happen to live on the 2nd story of an apartment building on Sepulveda, you're not going to be happy because they're going to be looking in your window every 2.5 minutes when they go by. And we basically are going to tell Metro and have been telling them that it's just completely unacceptable and they need to get rid of it. But the other 4 are pretty good. So we've got 4 chances out of 5 of getting a decent concept, and we're going to fight the 5th one and hopefully just fight it till it disappears. And we'll be telling you how to help us. So stay tuned and you'll be getting more in the newsletter and other e-blasts over the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Jeff, once again, I apologize. So if you could continue.
So no worries. Want to make sure we get all the business that needs to be taken care of out of the way first. But as I was starting to say, I think I always like to talk to, when I talk to new groups, I always like to stress what the assessor does, but as importantly, what the assessor does not do. I've learned in the 6 years I've been in this job that almost everybody thinks they know what I do. But the one thing that thing is taxes. I do not collect taxes. There's another guy who collects taxes. He's got a very intuitive title. He's called the tax collector. The assessor's job is to value property. We are not involved in the taxation side. As assessor, I'm one of 3 elected officials in the county. The other 2 are much better known than I am. That's the sheriff and the DA. Although one could argue whether that's a good thing or not these days. I administer a department with about 1,200 employees in 6 locations throughout LA County. About half of my employees are appraisers, and we're the largest local property assessment agency in the United States. We're responsible for valuing over 2.5 million real property parcels and business assessments, which last year were valued at over $1.8 trillion. But in addition to real property, which includes land and improvements, I'm also responsible for assessing the value of what's called business personal property. If you're a business owner, you know what this is. You have to pay property taxes on your furniture, your equipment, and your machinery. By the way, that also includes aircraft, including both commercial aircraft and general aviation, mobile homes, boats, and believe it or not, even racehorses. So let me jump right into the topic that's currently on a lot of people's minds, and that is Proposition 19. Even though this measure, which was adopted last November, is now fully in effect, there are two different implementation dates for the different components. They were February 16th and April 1st, but there still remains significant administrative and logistical challenges to administering this measure. If you didn't know, Prop 19 has two major components. The first one is the less controversial one, and the one that really helped to sell this measure to the public last fall during the election. This part allows a homeowner who is over 55, severely disabled, or the victim of a natural disaster such as an earthquake, fire, or flood, to transfer their property tax base with them when they sell their home and purchase a new one. The second component, and the one that's actually caused a great deal more concern, relates to the transfer of property between family members, especially between parent to child and grandparent to grandchild. So under the previous law that was replaced by Prop 19, this was called Proposition 58, a parent was allowed to transfer to their children their primary home of any value and its assessed value without resulting in a reassessment, even if the children did not occupy the property. And this even allowed the children to use the property as a rental property. Additionally, the previous law also allowed a parent to leave up to $1 million in additional property to their children and transfer it without a reassessment, such as rental property or commercial property. However, as of February 16th, Proposition 19 initiated significant changes to the law as it relates to intergenerational transfers from parent to child and grandparent to grandchild. And it significantly reduces the property tax benefits that previously existed. Under Prop 19, for an intergenerational transfer, a couple of conditions must be met. First, that the only property that your children can inherit must be and can only be your primary residence. No other property is now eligible. Secondly, your child or grandchild must make that home their primary residence within 1 year of the transfer. And they must also file for a homeowner's exemption within that 1 year. If the inherited tax base is now subject, depending on its value, to an increase in property taxes for your heirs. And the rule of thumb is if the property is worth less than $1 million, the property will not be reassessed and your children can inherit the property and the tax base without any change. But once the property is worth more than $1 million, as is much more and more the case in LA County, there's a value comparison test is applied. Whether or not the inherited base year value will be subject to an upward adjustment will depend on the extent to which the market value of the property exceeds $1 million. But once it's worth more than $1 million, your heirs should expect that their taxes will go up. Prop 19 also, as I referenced, eliminates the additional property that you can transfer to your children. Well, you can still transfer it, but it will be reassessed to market value, and the property taxes will likely increase. We're experiencing some really serious challenges in implementing Prop 19, primarily because it was so hastily written at the end of last year's legislative session. It left it full of ambiguities, inconsistencies, and contradictions. And myself and the other 57 California assessors are all having a difficult time figuring out how to implement a measure with so many deficiencies. As you can imagine, if we're having a difficult time, it's even more difficult for the public. Even worse, it's now in effect and we still don't have all the answers. We've been working to get legislation to clarify and untangle a lot of those ambiguities. But I can tell you that in the short term, until that legislation is adopted, there's going to be tremendous amount of uncertainty and confusion in the market and in assessor operations across the state. There is legislation that will help clarify a portion of Prop 19. It's Senate Bill 539, sponsored by Senator Hertzberg. Regrettably, it only addresses a very small piece of Prop 19. The vast bulk of the measure is not yet in a legislative bill. And without it, the Board of Equalization, the 58 county assessors will be without the statutory guidelines on how to implement the measure. and how to provide you and other taxpayers with information that you need when engaging in transactions. And because these types of transactions are taking now with so much uncertainty, to be quite candid, a lot of homeowners who are selling their property looking to buy new properties, there's no really easy way to say it other than they're going to get screwed. We're already getting a lot of public feedback about the intergenerational transfers. Under Prop 19, the child inheritance tax benefits were greatly reduced in order to increase benefits for seniors. That was something they didn't talk a lot about during the campaign. They made it sound like this is going to be a great benefit for seniors and the disabled, which it is. But the revenue, potential revenue lost from freezing tax bases was offset by reducing property tax benefits for families. From my perspective, part of the problem with that is I don't really think the public understood that while they're voting to increase benefits from one group, they're taking them away from another, and in many cases from themselves and their own children. And a lot of folks with very modest real estate holdings are pretty angry to learn that their kids are not going to enjoy the same benefits that they've previously been able to enjoy since 1986 when Prop 58 went into effect. You may recall during the Prop 19 campaign, they talked a lot about super wealthy families who are getting away with paying very low taxes, but were generating vast amounts of revenue from renting out valuable family homes. In fact, they talked about the family of the late actor Lloyd Bridges and his home in Malibu. But the truth is most people inheriting family property are not wealthy or real estate moguls. They may own a home, maybe a rental property, and the benefits that used to be available have been reduced. In the meantime, we're doing the best that we can do to provide training to our staff to try to find a way to provide guidance to taxpayers who want to know, who want answers to what Prop 19 will mean to them in an environment where we have no answers. When this, on the other hand, this measure is already the law, is in effect. To help the public understand how your taxes may be impacted with a family transfer or base year transfer, we've developed a web page on my website dedicated exclusively to Prop 19. A lot of information and resources. We developed some online tools as well to help you figure out what your new property tax base will be when you transfer your tax base to a new home or when you leave that property to your children. The website has the two tools. One is called the Parent to Child Transfer Calculator. The other is called the Base Year Transfer Calculator. All that you need to get that estimate is the property address or the assessor's parcel number, as well as the fair market value of the property at the date of transfer. My website also includes an informative webinar called A Guide to Inheritance. We feature estate planning experts and a CPA who provide information on the effects of Prop 19 that expand beyond just property taxes. Because it's important to remember that there's other financial implications other than property taxes, such as inheritance taxes, capital gains taxes when you transfer properties. And again, all this information is available on my website at assessor.lacounty.gov. Finally, I want to talk just briefly about, give you a quick update on the assessment role. As you may know, the primary job of the assessor is the production of the annual assessment roll, which is essentially the inventory of all taxable property in the county. And the assessment roll has a number of important functions. One of them, it's an important planning document for local governments. I know LA City calls all the time wanting to know where their property taxes are going to be as they prepare their budget. It also serves as an important economic indicator, giving some insight as to the health of the real estate market. What I can tell you is that the last year's assessment roll, what we call the 2020 assessment roll, showed that property values countywide grew at 5.97%. And that was the 10th consecutive year of property value growth since the recession of 2008. We are expecting, despite the COVID-19 recession, positive growth in the assessment roll now being prepared. It'll be completed at the end of June, although the growth this year will be significantly less than last year. To give you an idea of roll value growth in the nearby area, Sherman Oaks, for instance, Burbank experienced assessed value growth of almost 5% in 2020 over the previous year. But I do want to emphasize that some of the numbers that I've given do not reflect the full impact of COVID-19 on the real estate market. We're expecting a significant impact, particularly on commercial properties, hotels, restaurants, retail as well will be affected. We're expecting a significant increase in the number of assessment appeals to be filed and decline in value applications. However, despite the economic distress caused by COVID, the real estate market, the residential market in particular, has fared fairly well. The median sales price for a single family residence rose over 15% to an all-time high of $761,000 in March. As of March 1st, Sherman Oaks had experienced a 9.2% increase in median sales price over the same period last year. And the increase in median sales price is largely due to two things: sustained sales activity at the high end of the market and upward price pressure from competition due to limited inventory. Essentially, at both the high and low end of the market, homeowners are competing over a limited number of homes, which is really driving up the price. Another important factor is that the interest rates are really low, and so the cost to borrow money has been at a historic low and is also pushing demand. So that pretty much wraps up my update for this evening. I do want to thank you again for the opportunity to share with you this information about my office and Prop 19. I brought a number of staff with me today to help me answer questions if any questions come in that are too hard for me. Robert Izazaki is an expert on Prop 19, as well as one of my field deputies, Jackie Dialmeda, and I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Matt, who has the questions.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. You're okay with me calling you Jeffrey?
Jeff is better.
Okay. All right, I just want to be respectful to you, so I will call you Jeff. So just again, so the audience understands, some of you are sending in questions through the email or through the Q&A on the Zoom call, which is great. Others have sent some questions in. Some of the questions do not apply to the assessor's office, so those questions will forward over to the council office or the appropriate office. If I don't get to your question, it's not because you didn't ask the best question. It might be because Richard pulled the plug on me and we ran out of time. So I'll try to get to everybody's question, but I may not. Once your question, if you're on the line and I queue up Bob to open up your mic, once you ask the question directly, then Bob will mute you after that so that you're not going to be able to do a follow-up unless Jeff asks for your response. And Bob, just so you know, after I ask Jeff a question, Royce, who put a question in, if you can queue him up for the next question, that'd be great. So, Jeff, talking about Proposition 19, you talked about a lot of the individual investors who have property, their heirs their heirs being taxed on the at the time of transfer, the time of death. I've gotten a lot of, I'm in real estate and I'm a real estate agent. And I've gotten quite a few calls from folks who were surprised at that, were shocked at that, were not happy with that. But I also had other folks call because their properties were, their individual properties, their rental properties were in individual LLCs and or trust. It's their understanding that since they don't own the property and it's in an LLC, they might benefit from the LLC, the corporation. They don't actually own it at the time of passing. Whoever that property is, whoever inherits that, the tax base does not change, and there is no inheritance tax. Can you comment on that?
Well, that's in terms of property taxes, that's not accurate. An LLC, if it's in a legal entity such as an LLC, it is not eligible to receive the inheritance tax benefits for property taxes. That'll be reassessed to market value. If it's in a trust, then you would be able to inherit the tax base, but not if it's in an LLC.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Terrific. Bob, is Royce available?
I just allowed him to talk.
Okay, Royce, you want to ask your question?
Is that me?
That's you.
Oh, okay. My husband passed away February 3rd, before the effective date. Can my son inherit if I disclaim that part of the my inheritance, because it's in a trust? If I disclaim it, can my son inherit and retain the property tax exemption, Prop 13?
Well, so there's some yeses and nos, and then there's some uncertainty in that. And that's what I did ask Robert Izozaki, who is an ownership expert and attorney in my office, who might be able to help us navigate this question. So you're under the previous law and the current law, your son can inherit property from you and from your husband. They can, he can also inherit the tax base, depending on when, help me understand this clearly. Your son is inheriting the entire property. You are no longer involved. You've turned it over to him.
Yeah. He would inherit the portion that my husband owned.
So
the property's passed now through
Right.
3 generations. So there's other people who own parts of it.
So Robert, can you help us walk through the details on that case, please?
Yeah, sure. And of course, every situation is different, but as I understand it here, the property was intended to pass from the husband to the wife. The wife at this time is claiming that she would like to disclaim her interest in that real property so it can then pass to their child, their son. There does appear to the initial transfer from the husband to wife would be subject to the interspousal exclusion, and then the subsequent transfer from the wife to their son could be eligible for the parent-child exclusion. Now, one caveat I would offer is there are certain guidelines that are provided by the Board of Equalization as far as disclaiming interests in trust estates. So that may be something that you or your legal representation may want to look into a little bit further. But generally, that's what I would see as far as that situation is concerned.
The rule of thumb is, yes, your son can inherit that property, can inherit your late husband's portion and yours, subject to Prop 58 previously, and now Prop 19. Depending on the value of your home, there may be an adjustment in property taxes because Prop 19 puts a cap on how much can be inherited. But it sounds like there's some moving parts there, and we're happy to answer more specific questions. I did put my contact information into the chat, and happy to put you in touch with somebody who can guide you through that. Does that help?
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, Bob, were you able to open up either Lauren Neiman or Joy Brand?
Lauren Neiman doesn't seem to be on.
Okay, so let me go ahead and ask Lauren's question then. Actually, I'm gonna actually ask a different question from somebody else who's not on right now. Is there a way to take the property tax basis with you to a second home that is already owned? This was from Kathy Kramer. She said her husband and I will eventually retire to a home we are currently renting out. Can we take our property tax rate from our current house to that house?
You're renting the current property. If you're renting the current property, then you don't own that tax base. Whoever the owner owns that.
No, what she's asking is that she owns a house. She wants to know if eventually, if she moves into that house, can she take that and makes that their primary residence? Can they?
Yeah, if you can take the property tax base from your primary residence and if you're a senior, you can transfer 3 times. So if they move into that home that they're renting out, that's their primary residence, they could then move up to 3 times and transfer that tax base with them. That's one of the benefits of Prop 19.
Okay, but hold on for a second. I believe that you have to actually purchase. If you own a property, you can actually, if you move into it 2 of the last 5 years, you can take your property taxes. You don't have to purchase it, repurchase it.
I don't think I'm totally clear on the question.
Okay, so this.
Maybe Robert is understanding this more clearly than I am.
Sure.
So the person owns a rental property. Their intention is that they want to move into that at some point, and they want to take it from a rental property and they want to make it their primary residence. They've been in their home for many, many years. They want to take their property tax base on their primary residence right now and move it to their rental property, which is now going to be their primary residence. Can they do that?
I guess I'm still confused about the transaction. If they own a rental property and they want to move into it, that becomes their primary residence. And then from that point forward, yes, they can then transfer that tax base.
If I may step in, the situation is a little bit different from, I think, what we contemplate under Prop 19 and previously under Prop 1690. My understanding is that the basic concept behind both of those propositions is selling your old home and purchasing a new one that you can move into. So here in this situation, if there's a property that this couple already owned, they did not purchase it as part of this transaction. It's my understanding that they would not be able to transfer their base year value, unless, of course, it fell within the provisions under Prop 19 as it currently stands now.
But Robert, if they were to move into that home and make that their primary residence, they could a year later then move and take that and transfer that base year. Could they not?
Correct, provided that they had purchased it within that 2-year period that's provided for under Prop 19.
Okay. Okay. You guys are confusing me as well right now, and I deal with this all the time. So I'm sure our audience is even more confused. So
let me add to that. Right now that there's a lot of, as I mentioned during my remarks, there's a lot of uncertainty about Prop 19 and when which laws will apply. So transactions that have been taking place over the last couple of months that may have bridged the old law and the new law, we have very little clarification on how to apply those, determining what point that the countdown clocks begin to be eligible for some of these benefits. We are waiting for legislation that will provide a little bit more clarity. This is where I'm concerned a lot of people are going to get in trouble because we simply don't have all the answers at this point.
okay, I'm going to move on because I'm confused. Okay, so the next question is Marshall's not on the call either. Okay, so Marshall Long, who's one of our board members, has a couple questions on a pretty popular item right now is people are adding accessory dwelling units or they're known as ADUs to their properties. So when somebody goes ahead and puts an ADU and then rents it out, how does your office look at that as far as higher assessor amounts?
So under Proposition 13, when you purchase your home, we assess it at market value, and that becomes your assessed value as long as you own the home. There's only 2 conditions where your assessed value will change. One is adding or deleting somebody from the deed, or a change in ownership, or doing new construction. So an ADU is not a special thing for us. We just consider it new construction. The same as if you were to add a second floor, enclose a porch, install a pool. And the way it works is we do not reassess the entire property. We reassess the additional square footage. So if you have a 2,000 square foot home that you purchased in the year 2000, you'll have that base year. Then you build a 500 square foot ADU. You'll have another base year for that additional 500 square feet. And your property tax will be combined of those two bases. Typically, when you do new construction, we use a little different methodology for establishing that value. We use what we call the cost approach. We use regional standards for construction and quality. So your entire property will not be reassessed, but just that additional square footage.
Okay. All right. I'm not getting a response on from Bob as far as if any of these folks are on the line. So I'm going to go ahead and just ask if Susan Hunter's on the line, but I'm going to go ahead and ask one of the questions that she asked. What do you believe can be done either through your interpretation of the current law or through proposed amendments to current laws that would ensure that many affordable housing projects for extremely and very low income Angelenos can receive property tax exemptions?
Well, that's all. Those are public policy discussions that are totally outside my my jurisdiction or authority. I'm not a policymaker or enforcement. We simply apply the laws that have already been adopted. I'm not sure how. I mean, even if I were to look at it from a public policy perspective, I don't know how I would approach that. It's the legislature. There are existing exemptions for nonprofit organizations to reduce their property taxes, and how affordable housing, which is built in and it qualifies for some of the what we call welfare exemptions, would be able to reduce their property tax benefit. But to expand that would require an action of the legislature or the voters.
Okay. Okay. Bob, if you can, again, you're not responding to my chat. So if you can open up Susan Hunter, she has another question. She just chatted that she is there. So if you can go ahead and open her up. But I'm going to ask a question from Joy Brand. And this kind of goes back to the other question that I asked earlier, but she's asking in a different way. If I rent out my house for, let's say, 5 years and then move back into it, can I still take my property taxes if I sell my house and buy another house?
So assuming that we start today and then she moves into a house 5 years from now.
Okay.
Is that a fair representation of that question?
Sure.
Okay, Robert, can we?
Sure, and I guess I'm still a little bit unclear on the facts. Could you please restate them?
So let me. I think some people. So there's two things that we have here. We have. I think people are confusing the fact if you live in your house 2 of the last 5 years and you sell it, you're if a single person, you get $250,000 of taxes you don't have to pay, and if you're a couple, you have $500,000. That's not what your office deals with. What you deal with is the taxes. And Proposition 19 deals with adding the ability to go ahead and move your property taxes 3 times, where it used to be where you could only move it once.
Right.
So what these questions are, and again, I think this person's a little confused on the living in 3 of the last 5 years, So, but the same question has to go with if they already own a house. If they already own a house and they've owned the house for years, can they move their property taxes if they're going to move into that house as their full time? Can they move? Can that be one of the 3 properties that they can move their property taxes to?
I have to say that I'm still totally befuddled by the question. I guess I'd have to diagram it. Show me where they live and what the relationship is where they live. Is the place that they're living now a rental, or do they own it? Because the law allows you to move the value, the assessment of where you live. And if we're talking about a rental property that you own, but somebody else is living in, and you're eventually going to live there, there are probably some scenarios where at a certain point you will be able to transfer that base year. But I guess I need more. I need more specifics to see what those all those moving parts are. But
okay, so you're saying that Proposition 19 says that you can move your property taxes if you just move. You it doesn't. You don't have to necessarily make a new purchase.
So assessor and group, maybe it would be best to go over the general rule under Prop 19, because some of these fact situations the facts are getting a little bit complicated. So Prop 19 says that if you sell your original property and within 2 years of that sale, you purchase a new property, of any value. You can transfer your base year value over to that newly purchased property. So potentially subject to some kind of upward adjustment if the new property is worth more than the old. So that's the general rule. And now under Prop 19, you can do that up to 3 times, as opposed to before under Prop 6090 when you could only do that once.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. So that goes so you said something that was important, that you can purchase. You have to purchase a property for within up to 2 years. If you already own the property and you move into it, you're not purchasing it, so it would not qualify.
So if you own the home and you're moving into it, that property already has a Prop 13 assessed value. And when you move into it, it's not going to change. You already own it. You already have the assessed value. That will remain the same. Then if you decide to sell it thereafter and within 2 years move to a new property, you can do that and take that base year with you.
So let's say I live in a house right now that I've lived in for 20 years that I purchased for $200,000.
Yes.
And let's say I have a rental house that I purchased 5 years, a rental property house that I purchased 5 years ago for $1 million. And it's been a rental for 5 years. Now I want to move into that house, the rental house, and I'm going to sell my house that I had $200,000. I want to take that $200,000 tax base and I want to transfer it
Yeah. No, you can't do that.
to the property that I've owned for 5 years. Does that qualify?
No, that won't qualify.
Okay, that was the question. Okay, thank you. I think Susan Hunter's queued up. You have another question, Susan?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you all so much for putting this together. It is greatly appreciated, and thank you all for your time. I knew, Mr. Prang, you did sort of touch on it, but I think, what we're seeing in the chat with some of the concerns about the homeless encampments and everything happening, it's producing the extremely low income and very low income housing that we need to be able to move people out of shelters and into housing is severely lacking. We have to build the bridge while we're crossing it, right? So I guess the question being, and you did kind of, touch on, you can only enforce what the laws say and do, but you are the county assessor. So I guess my question would then be, if we were to be able to offer up 100% exemption on extremely low and very low income housing, understanding that creating it brand new, you're already operating at a loss because of things like property taxes. If we were able to give a 100% exemption on extremely low and very low income, would that be at such a level that it would actually negatively impact the money coming into the county? Would it detrimentally hurt the county?
Well, exemptions and exclusions, those are 2 ways that people can keep their property taxes lower, do reduce revenue. It's an exemption means you're paying less than you would if under normal circumstances. And one of the things that my office does every year, as we produce, as I referenced during my remarks, the assessment roll, when we're all done figuring out all the transactions and how much money is being added, excuse me, we then subtract all the exemptions, which takes money off the assessment roll and reduces the total assessed value and therefore for the property tax revenues, which are generated for cities and schools, et cetera. As an administrator of the valuation system, I am administratively agnostic as to the policy. My job is simply to apply the law. If there's exclusion or an exemption, to grant it, to make sure people know that they're available. One of the things that we do with my communications division is make certain that we let people know what programs exist under the law that can help them save money. But in terms of granting more exemptions for affordable housing, depending on the types of tax breaks that are being offered, it could require a constitutional amendment. It could require action by the legislature, and whatever laws are adopted, I would apply. We would make ourselves available as experts to tell them what type of impact it would have on the assessment roll. But I'm actually not. I'm contrary to common thought, I am not involved in revenue. My job is simply to establish a fair and accurate value for property based on all the laws. And if policy determines that there's going to be less revenue in order to support more affordable housing, that's fine. We'll apply that, but that's not something that falls within my jurisdiction. I have no personal or administratively, my office has no level of expertise in those types of decisions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Jeff, so let me ask you a question. So the, so let's say I live on Valley Vista and Sepulveda. And let's say that the state of California decides to build a subway system that comes out of the hills and now is elevated in Sherman Oaks. And now there's a big rail system above my house. And my value, I feel, in my house, I don't want to move yet, but the value of my house, I believe, is going to be less than what it was, what I paid for. What is my appeal process? How do I fight to lower my property taxes, number one? And then number two, who is the judge and jury on that, on that appeal process?
So there are a number of ways to challenge your assessed value. And it gets a little bit complicated at a certain point, but I'll give you the easy way. So if you believe that this new mass transit adjacent to your home has lowered the value of your home, you can do a couple things. One, you can call my office and talk to an appraiser, provide them some evidence and say, I believe that my value has been reduced. Secondly, you could file what we call a decline in value, saying I believe that my property is worth less than what I paid for it. It's an administrative review. We would look at it, we do an analysis, and if we can demonstrate that your property's lost value, we will lower your assessed value. Or you could file an assessment appeal. You could file those between July and November of every year. And then you would go before either a hearing officer or the Assessment Appeals Board. This is a quasi-judicial body appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and you could argue your case before a hearing officer or the appeals board. It's kind of a courtroom-like setting where my office defends our value and you would argue to challenge that. Now, something to keep in mind when challenging your value, this is a point that causes a lot of confusion between with the public, because my office is only focused on your assessed value, not your market value. So let's say that you bought your home in the year 2000 for $500,000. Now it's worth $1 million. Then in comes the subway, and you think that your property is now worth less. If it falls from $1 million to $800,000, you're not entitled to property tax relief because your assessed value is still $500,000. The property that the level that you purchased it at. For you to get tax relief, the value of your home would have to fall below essentially what you paid for it, $500,000, in order to get any type of property tax relief. And you'd have to demonstrate that. You'd have to bring in comparable sales and say that, look what's happening in my neighborhood. Everybody's homes are dropping in value, and I am legally obligated to enroll those lower values.
Well, your property taxes your property values would have to go to the $500,000 that you paid for it.
Yeah, because
plus the bumps that you guys do every year.
Yeah, so there's a maximum 2% adjustment for cost of living. But if you are still, if the market value of your home is still above your assessed value, there's really nothing that can be done because you're still dealing with equity. You're still in the black. It's only when the value falls beneath your assessed value is there an impact on your property taxes.
Okay, but the appeal board process is actually a board or a hearing officer who's paid for by the county.
That's correct.
And the county assessor is the office is also by the county. So it's kind of like the.
So think of it this way, that my relationship to the Assessment Appeals Board is similar to the relationship of the district attorney to the Superior Court. So the Board of Supervisors appoints the court members, and we argue cases before them. And you would essentially be arguing your value of your property against me. We would be saying why we established that value, and you would be saying why you disagree with it.
Okay.
And these hearing officers hear lower value cases, appeals board members to hear appeals or higher value cases.
So if you were to go in there with good comps as far as that would support your value for a lower valuation, your office would have to show higher comps or dispute those lower comps in some way.
Yeah, we'd have to dispute it and provide evidence.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. I do not have any more questions from the audience, and the only other questions I have that were pre-submitted really don't apply. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it before Richard gives me the hook.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt, and also Los Angeles County Assessor Jeff Prang. Appreciate you being with us and educating us on a very complicated. You need to be an attorney to understand half of this, so we appreciate it.
Sure.
With that, I'll end the meeting. Reminder, the next meeting is the third Wednesday in May, and our speaker may be the next mayor of Los Angeles. So with that, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.